previous chapter, we saw how we can use Python's classes to create or build classes which holds some data for us. And we discussed that these classes, they don't have to do any other functionalities other than holding some data for us. So we created a class called stock, and then we created an init constructor which takes 3 inputs and creates some instance variables. We also saw the output or the class instance itself will not have a good wrapper method. So we created a dunder wrapper method, which kind of gives a nice print, nice string representation of the instance. And we also created a dunder equal method to compare multiple objects because these objects holds the data and we wanted to compare the data, not the object IDs. Now, like I mentioned, this is too much verbose code. So we said we will see how we can use data classes to achieve the same thing. Now we'll see how we can just replace this code by using data classes. So I'm going to delete all of this code and I'm going to replace it with this code. So here we are importing a data class from data classes, and we are kind of creating again a class which is named as stock. And then we have these 3 variables. These look like some class variables, right? And we don't have anything else. So we don't have init method, we don't have wrapper method, we don't have equal method, we don't have anything other than the class name and the variable. And also you should note that I'm adding some decorator on top of this class. This is a class decorator, and I'm saying at data class. Now, like I mentioned previously, we got rid of a lot of boilerplate code, and we now have only this much code. And let's see if this much code will do what we will do the same thing as what we did in the previous chapter, like we implemented wrapper, equal, and init method. So here I'm creating, so this is the class. Now I am initializing the class or creating an instance of this class, and I'm passing 3 inputs, and I'm just going to print out the h1 instance. And if I run this and see, as you can see, I didn't even implement any wrapper method, but I got a nice representation of the instance. It says stock and company and price and so on. This is really nice. And we also didn't implement the equal render equal method, so the equality operator. So, but still the code is able to, or the data class is able to take care of the the equality operator. Like as you can see here, I have h1 and h2, they are same, and when I say h1 is equal to h2, it says true, which is amazing, right? So only this much of code I'm able to achieve all of these things. Now let's go and understand what we have done. Right, so we have this class and we are saying class name, that is okay. And always remember to put the decorator, which is data class, if you are implementing any data class for your application, right? Now we have a variable called company, and we are mentioning something here, like we are saying str here, which is basically company name, it should be string. And we are saying price, which is floating point value, and share, which is an integer. This is called type hinting. So if you don't know what type hinting is, maybe I'll cover that in the future lectures. But type hinting is basically a way to say what type of data is expected. So this will not do anything when you actually execute the code. Like for example, I can say here it's str, but I can still provide an integer value. So this is just for humans to understand this has to be a string value. But the compiler won't care if you provide integer or if you float or anything, right? So this is just for human readability. Now, these are the things I'm creating, right? So this is how I'm creating the data class. So even if I don't provide this, it will still work. But you should definitely provide this, because there are Python interprets these variables in a different way. For example, if you don't provide anything here, it considers it as a class variable. If you provide it, it will consider it as instance variable. So only the lookup of the variable will change, but you should always practice providing the instance or the type hints for every. You can actually see the attributes, each attribute's type hint from the instance itself. Like for example, if I have the instance h1 here, and I can use something called render annotations to find out all the type hints of all the variables in this instance. Like for example, if I try to run this, I can see a dictionary where the key is the name of the attribute, and the value is the type of that attribute. Right? This may be useful, like if you are trying to do some inspections and so on, right? So this is the annotations. Now we will talk about another important topic about data classes. Is they are data classes are mutable. So when I say data classes are mutable, so you can modify, set or set the values of these attributes outside, right? Like for example, if I can say h1 dot company is something like Amazon or something. Say a new name, right? So this is allowed because data classes are mutable. And if you want to, let's say for some cases this may be helpful and some cases it may not be helpful. If you want to make sure your data classes are not mutable, means you want to make them immutable, then you have to set something called you have to set a you have to pass a variable frozen and set it to true when you initialize or when you write the decorator on top of the class. So if you do this, then the data class or this stock class will become immutable. So if, for example, if I just try to do the same thing here, I get an error because it says frozen instance cannot assign the company. So then it only becomes the instance becomes only readable. So this is one of the things we should remember. So there are many things like this in data classes. We have to understand them in detail. It's a big topic. I mean, I mean, if you see in Python books, so one chapter will be completely dedicated to this data classes itself. So we'll go in depth and understand other features of data classes and how we can use them, and we'll see all of those in the next chapter.